Tonight on Primetime, Israel's parliament, the Knesset, has passed a highly controversial law introducing the death penalty for Palestinians convicted of deadly attacks, marking a dramatic shift in a country that has not carried out executions since 1962. Backed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and driven by far-right Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, the law has sparked global backlash, with critics warning it may violate international law and deepen divisions. And as global backlash grows, is Israel facing mounting legal and diplomatic consequences over this dramatic shift? Stay with us. Hello and welcome to Primetime. Our top story for tonight: Israel has approved a controversial new law that could significantly change how it punishes those convicted of deadly attacks. The move has sparked strong international criticism and legal challenges, with concerns over its implications for human rights and the rule of law.
Israel's parliament has passed a law making the death penalty the default sentence for Palestinians convicted of deadly attacks in military courts. The measure fulfills a key pledge by far-right allies of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Under the law, executions would be carried out by hanging within 90 days of sentencing, with no right to clemency, although courts may still impose life imprisonment in what are described as special circumstances. The law has drawn international criticism. The United Kingdom, France, Germany, and Italy have expressed deep concern, warning it risks undermining democratic principles. The Palestinian Authority says it effectively legitimizes extrajudicial killing, while Hamas has warned it could endanger Palestinian prisoners. The chief of the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees, Philippe Lazzarini, said that the death penalty in Israel would be discriminatory and said he hoped the Supreme Court would block it.
Many others have been absolutely appalled by this abject law, which I really hope would be rejected by the Supreme Court. I think I'm not aware of democratic countries reinstating death penalty. We are more used to having countries abolishing death penalties. And on top of that, this would be an extraordinary discriminatory law, because it would basically target only one category of the population.
European Union Commission spokesperson said that Israel's death penalty law is very concerning.
We as EU, we are opposing capital punishment in all cases and under all circumstances, and we have said that from the start in terms of the law before even its adoption in Israel. Why? Because the death penalty is a violation of the right to life, and this is a core value to the EU.
In Khan Yunis, Palestinians voiced anger and concern, saying the law deepens fears for those held in Israeli prisons and reflects growing pressure on Palestinians amid the ongoing conflict.
We did not do this to their hostages. We did not execute their hostages. Just as we preserved their hostages, they should preserve our hostages. These hostages are human, not animals they execute.
This decision, it was already unjust to arrest prisoners to start with, let alone their execution. Our feeling as Palestinians, firstly, the loss of this big segments of our people in Israeli jails is a big catastrophe. So the idea of me being a father of a prisoner or a brother of a prisoner or a wife or mother, and to hear my son will be executed, of course the plight, suffering, wound and pain increases among all of our people as a result of this decision. The simplest word we can say is not only unjust, but it is unfair, overbearing and painful.
Inside Israel, rights groups have already petitioned the Supreme Court, arguing the law is unconstitutional and discriminatory. The court will now decide whether to hear the challenge. As legal challenges loom and international pressure mounts, the future of the law and its wider implications now remain uncertain.
To unpack the legal, political and humanitarian implications of this development in Israel, I'm joined by Daoud Kuttab, a Palestinian journalist who speaks to us from Amman, Jordan. Mr. Kuttab, welcome to the program and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Kuttab, how significant is this law in the context of Israel's legal and political system, and why has the Knesset decided to introduce the death penalty now?
Well, we're in Israel, they are in election season now. The current government is due to have elections this year, and the people who are pushing for this law are the very far-right, racist Minister of Police and others who are trying to improve their situation in the elections. And it's true that Netanyahu also, who's an ally of these people, also came and voted with them. But I think it reflects a totally false understanding of the role and the situation. The Israelis don't understand that they are occupying somebody's land, and the people who are under occupation have a right to resist. They consider the Palestinians to be criminals who are being pushed by some outside power. Palestinians are indigenous Palestinian residents who have a right to live in their country, and those arrested are political prisoners. They're not enemy territory. They're political prisoners who have a right to be released once the peace is agreed to. So I think there is a total misunderstanding, and I think it's going to create a bigger division with Europe and with other countries who abhor the idea of a capital punishment.
Mr. Kuttab, the supporters of this law say it will deter attacks. Does evidence support that claim?
Well, they are saying that people who don't recognize Israel could face the death penalty, but if you recognize Israel, then they will spare you the death penalty. So again, this is a false mix of politics. They don't understand that Palestinians under occupation have a right to resist, and that the conflict has to be dealt with as a political conflict, not as anything else. So I think there's, as I said, it's a political decision that is being pushed by the far-right racist government of Israel. And I think it's going to increase the hatred and the anger, because once people know that they will have the death penalty, they will attack Israelis without having to worry about being in prison. They will actually do more suicide attacks because they know they're going to be killed anyway. So they become martyrs. And I think Israelis are trying to push the Palestinians to be more radical so that they can say, you see, the Palestinians are radical. I think it's a very bad law, and I think it doesn't fit neither a democratic country nor a country that wants to have peace with its neighbors.
In practical terms, will this law apply equally to Palestinians and Israelis?
Absolutely not. This is a totally discriminatory law that only applies to Palestinians. It doesn't even apply to Jewish settlers who are considered terrorists by Israel itself. Those who carry out actions against civilians, whether soldiers or settlers, are immune from this law. So it's a very unusual discriminatory law, and many jurists think that even the Israeli High Court is more likely to reject this law and consider it unconstitutional. But regardless of what the Israelis think, I think what they're doing now is widening the anger around the world, who people don't believe that Israel is a democracy and Israel wants peace. It shows that they're neither democracy nor that they want peace.
So what role do military courts play in this law, and why is that controversial?
Well, first of all, you know that Israel doesn't have a constitution, but the basic law in Israel calls for equal treatment of the population. And this law, as we said, does not apply equal treatment. If they say anybody who is convicted of killing somebody else will have a death penalty, that would be one thing. But they're saying only people who don't recognize Palestine or who hate Israel will be punished with capital punishment. So it's a clear political action under the guise of the death penalty. And it's totally against international law, which says you have to keep political prisoners so that they can be exchanged once there is peace. So it shows that Israel doesn't want peace. They just want to continue the occupation, and they are showing that they have no interest in making any improvement in their relationship with the Palestinians. They just want to have more and more hatred among the Palestinians by doing this.
Mr. Kutab, in your view, how might this affect Israel's international standing, especially with European allies?
Well, I think the European Union has already told Israel that many of the treaties between Israel and the EU will be abolished if this becomes the law. Now, because the High Court is going to hear this, I think the EU will hold off in making any particular abolition of the agreements. But I think the gap between Israel and Europe has been widening since the Gaza genocide and the war crimes by Israel in Gaza, and the demand by the ICC warrant for the Prime Minister and the Defense Minister. So I think it's going to make it more and more difficult for Europe to justify having any relationship with Israel, and people are going to call on their governments to sanction Israel because of their carrying out these actions that are totally against democracy and international law.
Mm-hmm. So what are the chances that Israel's Supreme Court blocks or amends this legislation?
The relationship between the Netanyahu government and the Israeli court has not been good. The Israeli government, or the executive branch, has been trying very hard to weaken the role of the courts. So I don't think the Israeli courts are going to be very easy on Netanyahu and his government. But, you know, they did this law not so much because they really want the law. Mm-hmm. I think they did it to get more votes in the elections. It's only done as a gimmick, and that's why you saw the Minister of Police with the champagne. They're all excited about the death penalty, which is so sad. I mean, death penalty is taking somebody's life. God created everybody in his image, and now you're happy, you're celebrating that you will have the right to take people's lives. That's so sad, and I think the courts are likely not to allow this law.
Mr. Kutab, how might Palestinian groups and the broader region respond, and could these law escalate tensions or violence on the ground?
Right now, we're not in a position, I think, to answer the question in the sense that people are under occupation. The Israeli government has been brutal. Mm-hmm. And I don't think Palestinians today are thinking anything more than just surviving. And so nobody is thinking of opposition or a rebellion. But I think this law is going to make it, in a way, easier for people to carry out acts against Israel, because they know that they're going to be killed anyway, so they will go in a more aggressive way in attacking Israelis. And I think for the Israelis, it doesn't make any sense. And I think that's why the Israeli Shin Bet, the intelligence, has always been against the death penalty, because they know it will increase attacks on Israel, not decrease them.
Daud Kutab, thank you for your insights and for joining us on the program. We truly appreciate your time and perspective. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. After the break, we will look at the major stories from around the world. Stay with us.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome back. You are watching Prime Time. The conflict between Iran, Israel and the United States is expanding, with new attacks now affecting areas beyond the main battlefield. A drone strike on a Kuwaiti oil tanker near Dubai highlights the growing risks across the region. As strikes continue and tensions rise, concerns are mounting over how far this escalation could go.
The conflict between Iran, Israel and the United States is escalating, with attacks now spreading beyond direct military targets. A Kuwaiti oil tanker has been hit by a drone near Dubai, triggering a fire and highlighting the widening scope of the conflict. The vessel was carrying crude oil when it was struck, causing damage and a fire on board. All crew members were reported safe and the fire has been brought under control. Debris from aerial interception also injured 4 people in Dubai as air defenses responded to incoming threats. Authorities say an Iranian drone also hit a telecommunications building in Sharjah in what appears to be part of a broader wave of attacks. Meanwhile, US and Israeli strikes continue inside Iran. Explosions have been reported in Tehran, Isfahan and Zanjan as part of ongoing coordinated operations. Reports say US forces targeted a major ammunition depot in Isfahan using bunker buster bombs. Iran has responded with missile and drone attacks, targeting US and Israeli military sites across the region. Officials say the country is acting in self-defense as attacks continue. The Israeli military says it has identified missiles launched from Iran, with air defense systems working to intercept the threat. Residents were instructed to move into protected spaces and remain there until further notice. US President Donald Trump has shared a video showing massive explosions in Iran, posting the footage without explanation on social media. At the same time, reports say Trump is prepared to wind down the war even if the Strait of Hormuz remains largely closed. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the war is progressing but declined to give a timeline for when it could end. He told US media the conflict is beyond the halfway point, adding that Israeli and US forces are close to achieving key objectives. The Trump administration, however, continues to suggest a shorter timeline, saying the war could last around 4 to 6 weeks. But Tehran is rejecting those terms and says the conditions being proposed are unacceptable.
The materials that have been conveyed to us under various titles, such as the 15-point plan, mainly include very excessive, unrealistic and unreasonable demands. Our stance has been clear. Once we reach a conclusion, we will announce it in an appropriate way, because we have confidence in ourselves and we know what we want.
Iran also says it has not engaged in direct negotiations with the United States and maintains its position.
3 United Nations peacekeepers from Indonesia have been killed in separate incidents in southern Lebanon, following a weekend of deadly violence. 2 peacekeepers died on Monday after an explosion of unknown origin destroyed their vehicle near Bani Hayyan. 2 others were wounded. UN peacekeeping chief has condemned the attack, saying peacekeepers must never be targeted. Earlier, another Indonesian peacekeeper was killed overnight when a projectile struck near a UN position in southern Lebanon. A second soldier was critically injured. Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz says the Iran war is already impacting daily life in Europe, with rising costs and increased security measures now being felt in Germany.
For weeks now, petrol and energy costs for German households and businesses have been rising. And finally, we must once again step up police protection outside synagogues and Jewish communities. If this war escalates into a major regional conflict, it could place an even greater burden on Germany and Europe, as heavy as we last experienced during the COVID pandemic or at the start of the war in Ukraine. The best outcome is for this war to come to an end as soon as possible. Once the necessary conditions are met, Germany will, of course, be ready to make its contribution to ensuring freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. We have already put forward extensive proposals on this matter.
European Union leaders have arrived in Kiev to mark the 4th anniversary of the Bucha massacre and reaffirm support for Ukraine. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha welcomed EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas and other senior officials in Kiev, saying the strong European presence reinforces expectations of accountability. The delegation later visited a memorial in Bucha, where candles were laid in honor of those killed. Australia is stepping up pressure on major social media platforms, with authorities preparing for possible legal action over child safety rules. The move could set a global benchmark as countries across Europe weigh similar restrictions on young users.
Australia is moving closer to testing in court whether social media giants can be held accountable for keeping children off their platforms. 3 months after introducing a world-first ban on under-16s, the country's e-safety regulator has launched investigations into some of the biggest names in tech, including Facebook and Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat and TikTok, over suspected breaches. The government is now openly preparing for legal action. Communications Minister Annika Wells says authorities are gathering evidence strong enough for the e-safety commissioner to take the case to the federal court and win.
The tricks eSafety has uncovered in their compliance update are straight out of the big tech playbook. And Australia will not let the social media giants take Australians for mugs. The Albanese government says that under-16s should not be able to keep scanning their face until they crack age assurance techniques. Under-16s should not be able to immediately open another account once they have been kicked off their original account. And parents should be able to report underage use without being asked to sign a legal letter. None of this is impossible. None of this is even difficult for big tech, who are innovative billion-dollar companies.
Under the law, platforms must demonstrate they are taking reasonable steps to block underage users or face fines of up to 49.5 million Australian dollars per breach. However, enforcing that standard is already proving complex, with companies like Meta pointing to natural error margins in age verification technology. The outcome of these investigations could set a global precedent, with governments in Britain, Denmark, Spain and Greece closely monitoring Australia's approach as they consider similar restrictions.
French President Emmanuel Macron is in Japan ahead of June's G7 summit, with global security and economic issues high on the agenda. He will meet Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi and Emperor Naruhito during the 3-day visit. The talks are expected to focus on Iran, particularly the conflict's impact on the global economy. Both sides are also set to coordinate their positions on Ukraine ahead of the summit France will host in June. Paris is looking to expand cooperation with Tokyo in civil nuclear energy, artificial intelligence and space technologies. Japan and Indonesia have agreed to step up coordination on energy security. That's according to Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi. This comes as the Middle East conflict squeezes oil and gas supplies vital to Asia. Takaichi mentioned the strategic importance of cooperation on energy security alongside Indonesia's president after they met for talks in Tokyo.
In our meeting earlier, President Prabowo and I agreed to enhance our cooperation in specific areas of the economy and security in order to support Indonesia's proactive efforts to strengthen its national resilience. On regional and international developments, we had discussion about the situation in the Middle East, including Iran, as well as the South China Sea, the nuclear and missile issues, and our response to North Korea, including the abductions issue. In particular, regarding the Middle East situation, we agreed that the two countries will keep close ties on energy security.
The United States is facing new questions over how far it's willing to enforce sanctions on Cuba after making a rare exception that highlights the tension between political pressure and humanitarian need.
The White House says U.S. policy on Cuba remains unchanged after allowing a sanctioned Russian oil tanker to deliver fuel to the island. Washington says the move was made on humanitarian grounds as Cuba faces a worsening energy crisis.
But now the U.S. is letting this Russian tanker to Cuba. Is this a policy change, or is he willing to let more tankers into Cuba now?
This is not a policy change. There has not been a formal change in sanction policy. As the president said last night, we allowed this ship to reach Cuba in order to provide humanitarian needs to the Cuban people. These decisions are being made on a case-by-case basis. And as the administration has said, Cuba's non-functional economy cannot be fixed unless they undergo dramatic political and leadership change. But there has been no formal change with respect to sanction policy.
So you could expect more tankers to go to Cuba?
Again, these decisions are being made on a case-by-case basis right now.
Officials say sanctions remain in place, and the United States retains the authority to block or seize vessels that breach them. Cuba depends heavily on imported fuel to generate electricity and run transport, but supplies, especially from Venezuela, have declined. Combined with US restrictions, this has contributed to fuel shortages, blackouts, and rationing across the island. The decision follows remarks by US President Donald Trump, who indicated countries could send fuel if needed. Mexico's president says her country has the right to supply oil to Cuba for humanitarian or commercial purposes. She added that private businesses in Cuba are seeking fuel, with some approaching Mexico's state energy company. In Havana, residents say the Russian shipment offers only short-term relief. Cuba has gone months without regular deliveries, worsening power cuts and transport disruptions. Russia says the tanker delivered around 100,000 metric tons of crude oil. But without a longer-term solution, many Cubans say daily life remains uncertain as energy shortages persist.
After the break, we turn to rising tensions in the Strait of Hormuz, where Iran's plan to impose transit tolls could shake regional global energy markets. Stay with us.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories. Welcome to Gabala. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul, for A News.
Welcome back. You are watching Prime Time. A parliamentary committee in Iran has approved the draft bill tabled by MPs to impose tolls on the Strait of Hormuz. Our Turaj Shiralilo has more from Tehran.
1 month into the Israeli-US war on Iran, Tehran is asserting its sovereignty, while a select parliamentary committee passed a draft bill to discuss excising taxes on the transit of vessels carrying oil and gas from the Strait of Hormuz. According to senior MP Nasrullah Pejmanfar, Iran is going to maintain security of the Strait of Hormuz, and for this reason, which is considered a form of service provision, it will charge transit fees. The chairman of Article 90 Constitutional Committee was quoted saying by the Parliament's news website that the strategic waterway is not blocked. Rather, it is shut only to hostile enemy ships. Over the weekend, Iranian parliamentarians proposed 2 urgent draft bills for discussion at the plenary sessions on withdrawing from the Non-Proliferation Treaty and on excising environment pollution taxes and charging pilotage fees in Hormuz Strait. Meantime, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, in a phone contact with his French counterpart Jean-Noël Barrot, stressed that any provocative act by the aggressors and their supporters, including at the UN Security Council regarding the Strait of Hormuz, will complicate the situation. He said, the passage of vessels belonging to other countries is carried out in coordination with the competent Iranian authorities. Turaj Shiralidou, reporting from downtown Tehran for A News TV.
Strait of Hormuz, through which nearly a fifth of global oil passes, may soon face new restrictions as Iran moves to impose transit tolls and limit access. A parliamentary committee has approved a draft bill that could reshape maritime traffic, escalate geopolitical risks, and rattle global energy markets, already sensitive to instability in the Gulf. To unpack the legal, geopolitical, and economic implications, I'm joined by Associate Professor Dr. Zaur Gasumov from the Turkish German University in Istanbul, Turkey. Mr. Gasumov, welcome to the program, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Professor Gasumov, can Iran legally impose tolls on international shipping in such a vital waterway? And what does these proposals signal about Iran's broader strategy in the Gulf?
Well, Iran can do that, but actually the tolls and the decision of the parliament should give an additional sort of legitimacy to that. What we are witnessing currently is that Iran makes quite strong diplomacy out of Hormuz, instrumentalizing its proximity and instrumentalizing also to some extent the importance of the Strait of Hormuz for the international economy. So that means that that is actually one of the tiny array of tools Iran still has in its disposition to try to impact somehow the dynamics in the region and even dynamics on the international level.
Professor Gasimov, how might the United States and its allies respond, especially given the restrictions mentioned? And could this trigger military or naval escalation in the region?
Well, it's about a breakthrough. What we observe currently, there is a lack, the absence of a breakthrough. So the warfare is going on in a certain intensity on the both sides, but we don't see any outcomes in sense of any revolutionary change within of dynamics. So the both sides have a different number of calamities and so on, but in the same time, the disparities, the asymmetry is not as big on the ground. So, having seen that, the Tehran would insist on its possibilities in the Strait of Hormuz, and will try to gain time because with every day the situation on the oil market changes, and that affects the life of average people around the globe. And that is actually the hope of Iran, somehow to impact the international community. It's used somehow as a certain pressure on the United States to find a solution that would permit Iran to preserve its certain positions in the regional design.
How realistic is the enforcement of payments in Iran's national currency?
Well, that is the initial perception, that's the initial plan Iranian side proposed. But what we definitely see is a certain hierarchy of the countries. Iran is about to give privilege to some countries and not to give them to others. So to restrict one group of countries and let pass through the strait to others. So we see that there are certain interactions with Oman, with Pakistan, also with Russia and China, but not with the Western countries. So that is this certain strategy Iran runs in the region. So that is the one of the chapters in the book.
Professor Gasimov, could this measure further isolate Iran economically or diplomatically?
Well, I wouldn't overestimate this step. It wouldn't change the situation dramatically. So what we see now, actually, it's a radicalization of the warfare. We see the polarization in the warfare between Israel and US on the one hand, and Iran and its proxies on the other hand. So what we could expect in the coming days is the intensification, is a larger intensity of the strikes, of the mutual pounding, but that the decision of the Iranian parliament is actually not a breakthrough in the whole interaction.
And finally, how might the major shipping companies react to these potential restrictions?
Well, that is up to the question to whom these enterprises belong, because today Iran proclaimed or claimed to target U.S. American enterprises operating in the region. So expanding somehow the targets. So if the targets up to now were military bases and also infrastructure like energy related, fossils related infrastructure in the Gulf region. But now Tehran considers also to take into consideration also the economic infrastructure, like a non-oil sector, let us say. So that could cause more calamities, more casualties among the civilian population, of course, around the region. So that shows that the number of tools is getting smaller, and at the same time that the Iranian side also gets more polarized, more radicalized.
Professor Zaur Gasumov, thank you very much for your insights on this critical issue. We truly appreciate your time and expertise. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
After the break, we'll get the latest from our correspondents in the regions.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Welcome back. You're watching Prime Time. G7 leaders say they are ready to act to stabilize energy markets as the war in Iran continues to disrupt global supply. Oil prices are rising and pressure is building around key routes like the Strait of Hormuz, with governments warning of broader economic risks. Our Anita Sharma has more.
Welcome to this day in Europe, where the G7 tries to contain a global energy shock triggered by the war in Iran. Finance ministers, energy ministers, and central bank governors from the Group of Seven say they are ready to take, quote, all necessary measures to stabilize energy markets and protect the global economy. The high-level talks held virtually come as oil prices surge and supply chains face major disruption, particularly around the Strait of Hormuz, a critical route for global energy flows. In their statement, G7 leaders stressed the need to ensure uninterrupted energy supply, warning against export restrictions that could deepen the crisis. They also signaled close coordination with the International Energy Agency, or IEA, including the potential use of strategic oil reserves if conditions worsen. While the G7 welcomed the IEA's decision on March 11th to authorize the release of 400 million barrels of oil to counter the shortfall from the Hormuz blockage, that move did not cool hot oil markets. Countries are rolling out domestic measures to shield households and businesses from rising costs, but the risks are growing. The G7 warned higher energy prices could fuel inflation and slow economic growth, with central banks reaffirming their commitment to price stability, even as the outlook becomes more uncertain. There's also a clear political message here, recognizing the importance of coordinated international action to mitigate spillovers and safeguard macroeconomic stability. Although no concrete measures were announced by the G7, including any coordinated release of oil reserves, Monday's talks set up a critical assessment today by Europe's energy ministers that could determine whether words will translate into action. For A News, I'm Anita Sharma in Arnhem, Netherlands.
Azerbaijan has voiced strong support for Turkey after a fourth ballistic missile was intercepted over Turkish airspace on Monday. The latest incident comes amid rising tensions linked to the ongoing regional conflict. Here is the latest.
Azerbaijan's defense ministry has strongly condemned the launch of a fourth ballistic missile toward Turkish airspace, expressing solidarity with what it described as brotherly Turkey. In a statement, the ministry reaffirmed its unwavering support for Turkey's security and territorial integrity. According to the Turkish Defense Ministry, the missile, believed to have been launched from Iran, entered Turkish airspace on Monday before being intercepted by NATO air defense systems deployed in the eastern Mediterranean. Officials said the munition was successfully neutralized without causing any damage. The Defense Ministry stressed that all necessary measures were being taken to protect the country's territory and airspace. Hours after the interception, a NATO spokeswoman said the alliance was prepared for such threats and would do whatever was necessary to defend NATO allies. It was the fourth such missile to be fired toward Turkey since the ongoing regional war began 1 month ago. The three earlier missiles were intercepted on March 4th, 9th, and 13th. In the first incident, the missile was destroyed before reaching Turkish airspace, although the second and third managed to breach Turkish airspace before being neutralized. Following each incident, Ankara has lodged diplomatic protests with Tehran and summoned the Iranian ambassador to Turkey. Iran, however, has denied responsibility for the missile launches and has proposed the formation of a joint investigative mechanism to determine their origin. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has previously said that Tehran has no intention of attacking Turkey, insisting that Iran's defensive actions were focused solely on the sources of military attacks against it. For his part, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has repeatedly said that Turkey seeks to avoid being drawn into the conflict, but remains prepared to defend its airspace and territory. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Uzbekistan is hosting the 5th anniversary of the Space Technology Conference, bringing together global industry leaders as Tashkent steps up its ambitions in the space sector. Sevil Rajapova has more from Uzbekistan.
Tashkent is hosting the 5th anniversary of the Space Technology Conference, bringing together more than 400 delegates and representatives from over 30 countries to discuss the future of the region's space industry. The forum comes at a key moment for Uzbekistan, as the country advances plans to launch its first national satellite by 2028 and is currently working towards selecting and training its first astronaut. This year's discussions focus on satellite development, commercial spaceflight, and expanding Central Eurasia's role in the global space economy, as countries across the region accelerate their national space programs.
We are seeing how the private sector and the government is investing
a lot to the space sector. We see how the space is becoming a crucial part of economical development of the countries. Would it be monitoring of economical sector, development of agriculture, development of the scientific research and others. So it is a most important time to be in space. The first scientific small satellite is already under development by our students who are studying in Japan, in Kyushu University. They are studying their master's degree. During this master's degree, they are developing, assembling their first ever satellite. The name of the satellite was given by our respectable president, Shavkat Mirziyoyev. The name of the satellite is Mirza Ulugh-Bek. It's symbolic because Mirza Ulugh-Bek is one of the, I would say, biggest historical person of Uzbekistan.
Participants say growing demand for satellite data is driving closer cooperation between governments and international companies, as the region looks to strengthen its position in the global space market.
The advantage of our satellites is that we're collecting data every day. So we collect the data, we store the data, and the users can access the data. We have a quite rich historical archive that starts from 2016 up until now. And then we cover different areas in, for example, forestry, agriculture, water management, because there is a big environmental issues, right? For example, if we talk about the Central Asia region, there is a water management crisis, water crisis, where there is no enough water supply. So using our data is actually helps to identify those areas that are prone to the droughts, for example, and then government can take the actions.
The presence of international astronauts and private space companies reflects a broader shift towards commercialization and global collaboration in space exploration.
We have already created a know-how in that field, how to select, how to run a astronaut selection program, as well as how to get ready, make the preparations for this space program, requirements in the other half of the world, as well as comparing that as preparation program as well as the execution program in the run, and this in the eastern part of the world. So we are ready to provide any support that we can for our sister country, Uzbekistan, here.
The conference is also seen as a stepping stone towards the International Astronautical Congress 2028, which Uzbekistan is set to host in Samarkand, further reinforcing its ambitions to become a key player in the global space industry. It is Sivil Rajab reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
China's economic footprint in Central Asia continues to grow, particularly through infrastructure financing and long-term investment projects across the region. At the same time, countries are pursuing different approaches to managing external borrowing and financial partnerships. Our correspondent reports on the role of Chinese capital in the region's external debt and how Kazakhstan positions itself within this broader picture.
The share of Chinese capital in the external debt of Central Asian countries varies significantly across the region, with Kazakhstan showing one of the lowest levels. According to estimates based on data from the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, Chinese loans account for 30.5% of external debt in Kyrgyzstan, 16.1% in Tajikistan, 13.4% in Turkmenistan, and 7.5% in Uzbekistan. In Kazakhstan, the figure stands at just 3.6%. Across the region, Chinese financing has been largely directed toward infrastructure, including energy, roads, and transport. China often acts not only as a lender, but also as a systemic investor, taking part in construction and long-term servicing of projects. Kazakhstan, however, maintains a more diversified borrowing strategy. It works not only with China, but also with European partners, the Eurasian Economic Union, and international financial institutions, reducing reliance on a single source of funding. Analysts say Chinese capital in Kazakhstan is spread across multiple projects and not concentrated in strategic sectors, which helps limit risks. In contrast, in countries with higher exposure, such as Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, Chinese loans remain a key development tool, but may also increase long-term financial vulnerability. Experts note that while China's model delivers clear short-term gains, over time it can deepen economic dependence. Fariza Kalimurzen, Almaty, A-News.
Afghanistan's Ministry of Mines and Petroleum says work on the Tapi gas pipeline is moving ahead in Herat, with 25 kilometers on the route already laid inside the country. Officials say preparations for another 120 kilometers have also been completed, raising expectations for faster progress in the month ahead. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis has the details from Kabul.
Afghanistan's Ministry of Mines and Petroleum says construction on the Tapi gas pipeline is advancing steadily in Herat province, marking an important step forward for one of the region's biggest energy projects. According to the ministry, around 25 kilometers of the pipeline has already been laid inside Afghanistan, while preparations for an additional 120 kilometers of the route are now complete. The ministry says the arrival of new pipes and technical equipment at the project site is expected to accelerate construction further in the coming months. The spokesperson for the ministry said work on the Herat section is progressing according to plan and is expected to be completed by the end of the current calendar year. The Tapi pipeline linking Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan and India is widely seen as a major regional energy and economic project. Afghan officials say it can help create jobs, increase revenues and strengthen energy connectivity across the region, while also boosting broader regional cooperation. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A-News.
On behalf of the A-News team, thank you for being with us on Prime Time, and join us every weekdays for the latest updates from around the world.